In these problems, we're talking about symmetry and determining whether something is a line of symmetry. And just as a reminder, you've probably heard of this concept before, but symmetry is that quality that has to do with the fact that things they have the same shape or the same image on either side of some line. So for example, people, if you look at them from the front, they're basically symmetrical. If you were to draw a line from the middle of your forehead down through your body all the way to between your feet, you'd basically have the same stuff on each side. One leg on each side, an arm and a hand on each side, two eyes on each side. So in that sense, we're kind of symmetrical. In geometry, we're looking for lines that if you were to look on either side, they'd be exactly the same. And the way I think about this is what would happen if you folded the piece across that line? Would they match up? Well, if you look at A, you can probably tell right away, visualizing that in your head, that if you folded that, it's not going to match up. The part on the left is so much smaller than the part on the right. And if you were to look at D here, you could probably tell that that is symmetrical, that is a line of symmetry, and if you folded it across, it's going to match up exactly. In fact, I actually cut one of these out, and if you fold it across that line, indeed you do get something that matches up exactly. Might be a little harder looking at figures like B and C. Are those lines of symmetry or not? And at first you might say, yeah, they look absolutely the same on both sides. But if you were to fold, let's say C, and I cut out a C to help us with this. So there's C. If you were to fold that, here's what happens. They do not match up. You see you get, well, it's a little hard to see, but you get a little tail hanging off on this side, a little tail hanging off on that side. So that is not a line of symmetry. And that's the tricky part with these problems, is trying to visualize that in your head, whether if you fold them, they're going to match up perfectly or not. Let's look at a couple more problems. This next problem says, which of the following letters has at least one line of symmetry? And they're giving us H, P, S, and N. And hopefully you can see that H certainly has a line of symmetry. If you cut it right down the middle, you would have identical things on either side, and if you were to fold that there, it would match up. The others, it's harder to do that. You might at first think the S or the N is symmetrical, but I dare you to try to draw a line in there and fold it and have the sides match up. It doesn't work. All right, let's look at one more here. This is a tricky one. This says, which figure shows all the lines of symmetry? So there might be some here that don't have enough, some here that have too many. So let's try to figure this out. In A, clearly this line and this line, both of them, if you fold it across either one of those, they would match up. So both of those do look like lines of symmetry. So we can see we're going to have lines that go through the vertexes of the square and also through the center of the sides. But it's missing some, because you could definitely fold there. And if I can do this side, I can definitely do this side as well. And that's actually what we have going on right here. So B would work. A wasn't enough. But are there any more? Well, let's look at C here. C, we've got these lines, but they're off center. They're not on the centers of the sides or on the vertexes. And then on D, we have a ton of those lines. And just to show you that these off center, off vertex, or off center lines aren't going to work, I printed out D here and just trimmed away all but one of the lines. And so this is a line that's just off of the vertex. And if we fold across that line, you get a similar thing that happened with the figure up in C on the first problem. You get these edges that don't overlap in the right way. They don't match up with each other. So C and D, therefore, are not going to work. And if you're not sure about that, you could go ahead and print these out and cut them out and try to fold them. It takes a little bit of work, but some practice doing that might help you with these problems. So that's a little bit about symmetry.